All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to unpack the incredible story of genetics. And really, it's a journey from just kind of looking at things and wondering why to literally holding the code of life itself in our hands. It's a story of discovery, of immense power, and it brings up some of the biggest questions we've ever had to face as a species. So let's just start with the biggest question of all, right? What if we could go into our own biological source code and just delete the errors? The lines of code that cause these devastating illnesses. As we're about to see, this is not science fiction anymore. And it's really the question that's driving this entire revolution. So first up, cracking life's code. Because look, to even begin to understand the power to change our DNA, we have to go back to the beginning. And that was the monumental struggle to simply read it. When you look at a timeline like this, the pace is just wild. In 1859, Darwin knew that traits were being passed down, but he had no idea how. Just 10 years later, a guy named Friedrich Miescher actually isolated DNA for the first time. But then, there's this huge gap. It took almost another 100 years before Watson and Crick gave us that iconic double helix shape in 1953. And that single discovery, it changed literally everything. You see, discovering the double helix wasn't just about finding a cool-looking molecule. It was like finding the key to some ancient forgotten language. It was the Rosetta Stone for biology. For the very first time, science had the structure, the grammar, to even begin reading the most complicated instruction book in the entire universe. So, with the language finally in hand, humanity set off on its most ambitious biological quest ever. We weren't just reading a word or a sentence anymore. We were going to read the entire book, all 3 billion letters of it. And that's how long it took, 13 years. The Human Genome Project, which kicked off in 1990, was this massive international effort. It was a 13-year marathon, with scientists all over the globe just chipping away at this enormous task. And the scale, it's just hard to wrap your head around. They had to sequence 3 billion of these chemical base pairs. Those are the letters in our DNA. To put that in perspective, if you printed them out, the stack of paper would be something like 200 feet high. It's just staggering. And then finally, in 2003, they did it. They crossed the finish line. It was such a monumental achievement. All of a sudden, we could see the specific genetic code behind thousands of diseases, from Huntington's to certain types of breast cancer. We had the blueprint. We could read our own source code from start to finish. And that changed medicine forever. But here's the thing. Reading the book was one thing. What came next was a total game changer, a shift that changed the entire conversation. We were about to go from being readers to becoming authors. We were about to get the power to actually rewrite the code itself. This right here shows you the huge leap. For, over 50 years, genetics was all about reading, just observing, understanding what was already there. Genome editing, on the other hand, is about writing. It's about intentionally going in and changing that sequence. It's the difference between diagnosing a problem and actually being able to go in and fix it at the source. And, well, with that kind of incredible power comes an enormous, almost overwhelming responsibility. The ability to edit our own evolution forces us to hit the brakes and ask some really, really serious questions. Just because we can do something, does that mean we should? Now, the most profound ethical questions really circle around this very specific idea, heritable human genome editing. This is the big one. We're not just talking about treating one person's illness here. We are talking about making changes that become a permanent part of the human gene pool, changes that get passed down to every generation forever. And on that exact point, back in 2020, a major international commission of scientists made their position crystal clear. They basically said, whoa, hold on. The technology is not ready. As they stated right here, no one should even think about creating a pregnancy with an edited embryo until we can be absolutely certain the changes are precise and won't cause other unintended, harmful problems down the line. And the commission went even further. They said, look, if this technology ever becomes safe enough to use, it should only be considered for preventing very serious diseases that are caused by a single gene, things like cystic fibrosis or thalassemia. We're not talking about making designer babies or enhancements here. We're talking about preventing terrible suffering, and only under the absolute strictest of conditions. So, with the science moving this fast, the big question becomes, how do we, as a global community, even begin to manage it? Well, this has kicked off a massive international effort, with groups like the World Health Organization stepping up to try and create a framework for the future. So in 2021, a WHO expert panel took a really big step. They released a framework that recommends clear rules and oversight to guide this research responsibly. Basically, the world is trying to build the guardrails for the highway before the car is going too fast to control. Their plan really boils down to three key things. First, create a global registry so everyone knows what research is happening and where it's happening. Second, create a safe, confidential way for whistleblowers to report any unethical work they see. And third, make sure this incredibly powerful science only happens in countries that have strong national rules to govern it. It's really all about transparency and accountability. And so this is where we are. This is where the journey has left us. We've gone from not even knowing what DNA looked like to holding the power to rewrite it in our hands. The code for humanity's future is quite literally right there for the taking. And the ultimate question now is, who gets to write it? And that's something we're all going to have to decide together.